Welcome back everybody to linuxacademy.com. My name is Terry, and in today's course we continue our preparation for the Linux Foundation Certified System Administration exam. We are working within our HTTP services section, and today we're going to be talking specifically about how to restrict access to a web page location with Apache. So we can do this from within our overall Apache configuration, or we can do it at a vhost level. So although the system control commands that I'm going to use are specific for a CentOS 7 based system, this works equally as well and exactly the same way for an Ubuntu or Debian based system. We're just going to be using a systemd service management system to restart our Apache processes, but the configurations are exactly the same. So if we look within our Apache directory, so let's go to etc httpd, and we'll look at our configuration directory. If we edit our httpd.conf, we'll see that if we do a search on directory, there are a number of directory configurations that either give or take away permissions. And those permissions, we can do things like allowing the override of the permission for CGI, bin, etc. But what we want to do is we want to add or take away permissions similar to what we've done for var www, which is require all, allow override. In this case, we want to say certain people can have access to a particular directory. So if we look at our system here, what we've done already is we've created a directory in var www. Let's make sure the Apache service is running. So let's do system ctl restart on httpd so that we can make sure that HTTP is running. And we've created in var www tcox4, which is the name of this host. We've earlier created a vhost for this particular server, and we created an index file, and everybody has access to that particular website. Now, from within that website, though, now we have a directory called test, and in that test directory, we've created another HTML file that just says that this is the test directory. So if we go back to our Apache directory, let's fire up links and see that we not only have access on the local host to mylabserver.com, but also that we have access to the site test.html, which we do locally. Now we'll want to fire up a browser and see if we have access to that particular tcox4.mylabserver.com, and we get that. And if we say test.html, we can say this is the test directory. So we have access to that particular location internally and externally. Now, if I wanted to prevent anyone from accessing that directory, I can do that. If I edit the HTTP configuration in our conf directory, and I go to this directory right underneath of it, I can create another entry where I say var www tcox4 test, and then make sure you include the ending slash. What I want you to do is I want you to restrict the access based on the following information. The order that I want you to scan the directory is for allow and deny. I want to specifically allow from all of the IP addresses for myself, so that would be 52.2.215.84, which is my external IP. Allow from 172.31.16.59, which is my internal IP or my local LAN IP. And then I also want to allow from 127, which stands for my local host. And what that'll do is that means that any request that comes in from this particular machine will allow access to that directory. So for example, I can have a directory that I could run reports on that would only allow me to run reports if I'm on the server itself, or it may have information that is only available if I'm browsing from the server itself. But everyone else from all other IPs gets no access. So we save this file, and then we do a systemctl restart on HTTPD. And we can see that we now have links http tcox4.mylabserver.com test.html. We still have access to it, but we shouldn't have access to it from an external browser. So if we do tcox4.mylabserver.com test.html, I now don't have permission to access that on this server. And that's only if I know that exact path by default. Now, you'll also notice that because we've configured it at the HTTP configuration level, if I put in the external IP address for this particular server, if I do 52.2.215.84, I still get the access forbidden message. And the reason is because by putting it in the HTTP configuration file for the whole server, then I'm applying that to anyone coming in for any vhost trying to access that directory. Now I can control it for only the vhost and URL that I have by domain by configuring the same set of settings from within that particular vhost file. So if I just wanted, for example, I can remove this from the http.configuration file. We'll save this. We'll go over to our vhost.d file. We've got a configuration file for the vhost for tcox4, and I can add it after my document root, which will accomplish the same thing, but only for this particular vhost. So if I do a directory var www tcox4 test, and then I put in the IP addresses for my own server. So I say order, allow, deny, allow from 52.2.215.84, allow from 172.31.16.59, allow from 127, and then I have the directory closed. Add it here, systemctl restart httpd. Now let's clear the screen. If I do a links on http tcox4.mylabserver.com test.html, I have access to the directory because I'm coming from the local host, and it doesn't make any difference if I do the same thing by the IP address, because I've only applied the configuration to the vhost file. So all that should affect is my local host has access to it no matter what. But now, if I do, let's open up another window and do http tcox4.mylabserver.com. I have access to the server, but do I have access by name to the test.html? I do not. But if I put in the IP address, 52.2.215.84, I also don't have access to the particular IP address. So all I'm doing is applying it in a different location for that particular site and server, which is in the directory structure that I'm saying that you can't have access to. But I have more granular control over to who and what may have access to something from within my vhost configuration rather than my HTTP configuration for the whole server. So for restricting access to a website or web page or a directory from Apache, that's all there is to it. My name is Terry for Linux Academy.